the Mason, where we interview Masons as they share their experiences and life stories. All right, and here we are. Hello and welcome again to Meet the Mason. I'm Brother Justin Garrett, and I'm here today with our Lodge Education Officer. He's been our education officer for, I don't know, at least the past 12 years. I'm not sure. This is Brother Bob Melvin. Brother Bob, how long have you been with us?
I think since 2000, I think 14.
Really?
Maybe a little sooner than that.
I'm actually surprised by that.
Yeah, I'm surprised by that too.
Yeah, it's hard to believe, right? You know, the past 10 years, they seem to, flash right by you. It's almost imperceptible.
Well, when you find somebody who can make spaghetti, you let them make it every week.
Yeah, you got a point there. Yeah. So, Brother Bob, here at Meet the Mason, we have a handful of basic questions that we tend to ask people, and we just let the whole conversation kind of evolve or devolve, depends on how you look at it from there. So, Brother Bob, can you tell us about what your life was like before Freemasonry? Who were you before Freemasonry?
Honestly, not that much different. And the reason I say that, my father was a Southern Baptist minister, so you can obviously imagine what kind of household I grew up in. Wasn't a lot of drinking or cursing or dancing, for that matter. My parents loved each other, stayed married for over 50 years. I used to say I grew up with everything but the white picket fence, just being in a normal household. And then it was probably in my mid-30s where I realized that wasn't normal household. That most people have some sort of drama or divorce or tragedies and those sorts of things. And, I didn't have that. My parents loved each other. They didn't beat us. They fed us. They loved us. They clothed us, took care of us, taught us. So I had a very good situation, very lucky, as I found out later on in life. At the time, I'd known about Masonry, had been interested in Masonry. My grandfather was a Mason. I had two uncles that were Masons. And I was in a fraternity in college. I'm not comparing the two, but yeah, there are similarities. It's the brotherhood. It's the friendships. It's the chance to get to know people. Particularly as you get older, harder to meet people, harder to make friends. And certainly that time in my life, I don't know what I should say and shouldn't say, but I was married to the crazy old bat. We weren't getting along, as you might expect. And it was as much a reason to get out of the house as it was to meet men and develop a brotherhood. So, when you're seeking, you find. And what I found was no one was in a big hurry to make me a brother. No one was in a big hurry to bring me along. It was that kind of time where still you might get the answer, go join the Lions Club. Where it was very pressing. You had to show initiative. You had to make an effort.
When was this? Was this like the Ralph Hicks era?
It was like 07.
Oh, okay.
But, that's old school Masonry.
It is.
Where you don't just talk about it. You don't just walk up, knock on the door, say, hey, I want to be a Mason. And they go, okay, here's the paperwork. I think that's changed a bit. I think we recognize we need to be a little more open and receptive.
That's actually one thing that I like about what we do differently now is, it used to be a very kind of a standoffish group.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I remember the first time that I came to the lodge, I was like, at the time I was like 16 and I was biking everywhere, right? Like I just had like a mountain bike and I would ride, it was like 7 or 14 or something like that miles round trip. It was 14 miles round trip to where I was living at the time, to downtown. And so I'm walking around with one of my buddies and I look like garbage, right? I mean, here I am, riding a bike. And the entire time I'm walking around like, wow, this is cool. I had no clue that this was George Washington's Mother Lodge and I really didn't care. I was like, dude, this is what I want to do. And all I remember seeing was everybody rolling their eyes, except for Jeff Van Kuren. He was the only one who actually sat there and went, okay, so here, blah, blah, blah. This is X, Y, and Z, talking to me about a handful of things. Gave me brother Chris Tripp's information for the DMLA because I was thinking about that at the time. So yeah, over time it has been, and now these days people walk through the door and, if we had tails, they'd be wagging, Oh man, it's really great to see people come through and show some interest. And, we're open to talking to them about stuff, showing them, all kinds of cool stuff that we have, and not being so closed off and so reserved and, cloak and dagger, we're not doing that anymore.
Yeah, there was a stoicism. There was a standoffishness. Wasn't personal. And what I've come to realize over the years, people get to lodge, they see people sometimes they hadn't seen in a month or 2, 3 months, perhaps even longer. And those are the people they gravitate to. You have that commonality. You have that built experience. And you naturally gravitate to those people, honestly ignoring those people you don't know. There are few people that can walk into a room, particularly if you're a new member of a group, and go, hi, how you doing? What's your name? Most just stand there and think someone's going to come over to them. Yeah, I found out quickly. You better walk up to somebody and shake their hand.
Right.
And I think the lodge, you're absolutely right. For lack of a better phrase, the lodge has mellowed a little. Mm-hmm. And I think in a good way, warmer, friendlier, where if you see somebody you don't recognize, you go over and greet them. Thank you for being here. And I think that makes a huge difference. I think it's very important, particularly visitors. Thanks for coming. Shake their hand, smile, ask them their name. We're all brothers. I mean, certainly if your brother showed up to your house, you would call him by his name, invite him in, ask him if you want something to drink, have a seat, relax, turn on the TV. And I think coming to a lodge should be that way also.
Right.
I want to tell this story just because I don't get to tell it enough.
Okay.
I told you I joined Masonry looking for brotherhood, rough time in my life, nice reason to get out of the house. Second to that, I had an ancestor. His name was Daniel Melvin. The story goes that he was captured by Blackbeard the pirate. Now, whether he was actually captured or not, I question, because I don't recall pirates capturing people and making them work. You joined a crew. But I'm sure in my family's history, they wanted to make it sound a little nicer than my ancestor was a pirate. He worked as a cabin boy on Blackbeard's ship, Queen Anne's Revenge. It's all documented. And at some point, coincidentally, around the time that the Queen Anne's Revenge got marooned on the sandbar, and Blackbeard absconded with his treasures on another ship, my ancestor shows up on the shores of North Carolina with a man named Billy Bones. Mr. Bones was a Mason. My ancestor was not. When they showed up on shore, he ran into another Mason, gave him a distress sign, and received, the record shows he received clothes, money, help along the way, anything he could do, that sort of thing. Well, since my ancestor was not a Mason, they gave him a couple of coins. So throughout the family, the story goes that from then on, we decided we all had to be Masons. I don't know how true that part is, but as it turns out, I had a lot of Masons in my ancestry.
That's interesting. That reminds me a lot of my first time visiting Arizona. So when I went out there, I had no clue what I was doing, right? I wasn't familiar with elevation changes or what the desert's like. I just went out there and I said, cool, let's do it, right? And so, I'm there for about a week, and, I'm visiting some friends that have since moved out there and stuff like that. One day I sat there and I thought, I want to go up to Sedona and do some hippie stuff. Like, that's just what I want to go do, right? So I tried driving up there. Now, for some context, Fredericksburg is at 50 feet elevation.
Mm-hmm.
The Phoenix is at about 1,200 feet, and Sedona is at about a mile high, more or less, 4,000 to, so give or take. And so I'm driving up there, and, you know, it's like this whole uphill battle the entire way. And I remember looking on the side of the highway, and something said, don't be mindful of your cigarette butts and blah, 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 fire hazard. But the other thing was elevation 3,000 feet. And I said, whatever that means. Right. And I just kept on driving. And then I end up at a place called Camp Verde at a rest stop. And the whole time I'm walking around, I'm like, man, I just feel like I'm out of it. I don't feel well. I feel kind of like nauseous and queasy. What's going on with me? Right. And so I'm sitting there thinking about everything that could possibly going on. And I'm like, if this is how I'm feeling, I should probably just, take care of myself. Right. So I actually just packed up and I drove right back down to the valley in Phoenix. And as I'm parking my car, I take note of where I'm at. I try to get something to eat. Right. There's a little restaurant that I wanted to check out and visit. And there's like this protest that's going on up the street. People are just getting so angry. And then magically I'm wandering around and I stumble on the Mason Lodge. And there's a man out there just gardening. And I'm just talking to him, and everything seems like it's going great. Nothing special happening here. But I am messed up still. Right. I have no clue what's happening to me. I'm like, dude, what is it? And so at some point he just stands up, right? And he just unlocks the door and he's like, yeah, I'm our gardener, So he opens that whole thing up, lets me in. Everybody in quick succession actually starts showing up to the lodge, and they have like this whole potluck style thing. And the only thing that they were like, hey man, we'll eat whatever you want. And I said, cool. And the only thing that I got was water, copious amounts of water. And then we went upstairs and we did a Master Mason's degree. Somewhere in the middle of it, I passed out, right? I have no clue what happened, but I think I just needed some serious rest. I wake up and I'm like, I mean, imagine going to a football game, and as soon as you sit down in the seats, not as soon as you sit down in the seats, but somewhere, right before the halftime show, you just start, croaking, right? So, but as soon as the whole thing's over, you just sit there and you go, my team won. Woo.
Made it.
Yeah, that's exactly how it felt, right? So after that, they said, first off, here's a lapel pin. It's really great to, have you with us and blah, blah, blah. I start developing some connections over there, and they decided to take me back to my car. I had no clue where I parked it, right? I had like a couple of pictures and an idea, but I was like, dude, I really don't know where I was. We wandered around for like a half hour before they finally dropped me off at where we finally find the car and they dropped me off. But I will never forget that level of, what do you want to call it? Compassion, this level of, taking care of your fellow
Well, they
brothers.
might have thought you were nuts.
Yeah, they probably did.
Now, if you'd been driving an old 70s car, you'd have had to walk back. These elevation changes, it messed with the carburetors.
Oh, see? Yeah, you got a point there. Well, it's a good thing it was fuel injected.
Things old people know.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, and that's the way it should be. And we don't question.
Okay.
We don't question why a brother's in lodge. We shouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
If a brother needs help, we should help. Don't need to know why.
Yeah.
Now that doesn't mean we should go out and swap out his water heater because he wants to watch the game instead. But we should help when we can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think that especially goes for strangers.
And that's exactly how it happened. So, for any of the brothers from Saguaro 45 in Arizona, I want to say thank you personally.
There you go.
So, yeah. So, do you have any stories like that yourself?
You should ask me sooner. Give me time to think about it. I'm sure I do. I think it would just be in general. In general, as soon as I came into the Masonic Lodge and got to meet people, got to meet the brothers, boy, I needed that. I needed the association of like minds. I needed the association of men. I was working a lot and then going home. Yeah, no one at home. The only thing I liked at home was my TV. So the association at the lodge, not to mention the bond you build. Just with working the people who are working you through the catechisms. Those are relationships you'll have for the rest of your life. Those are people you won't forget.
You're right about that. Yeah.
And the effort it takes. And, it's one thing to say, well, our candidate has put forth this effort. Look, he gives his return. He's done a good job. Man, how about the people that process 10, 15 different new brothers? Good heavens. That's work.
It is.
That's work. And to keep it fresh in your mind and be able to expound upon it, explain it, be consistent, give it in a way that a man can remember it and learn it. That's a trick. That's a trick that not everybody can pull off.
You're right. I think Brother Rudy has been touted as probably one of the biggest contributors.
Legendary.
Yeah, he is. Wow. Something to emulate,
Absolutely.
Who is your coach?
Who
mentored you in all of
that? A brother by the name of Dubby Isgett from New Kent.
Okay.
He's past master, served in masonry for a lot of years. He and I knew each other through work. Also, Shields Jones. Shields Jones has been visiting our lodge lately. I've seen the last couple stated meetings. And again, through work. Dubby volunteered to be my coach. And because we would see each other for a period at work where we didn't have to work, we could walk off, be by ourselves for a half hour, 45 minutes, or an hour in some cases. Another day, we rode together. So it wasn't that we get together, I drive over to his house, we'd meet once a week and try to, no, I got to see him 2, maybe 3 times a week, not to mention, if I called him. So learning the catechism, anyone who does it tell you it's not easy. It's not something you just hear it and go, oh, okay, got it. It takes repetition and practice and coaching, good coaching. And Dubby, man, he knew it. He was sharp, knew how to teach it. And he and Shields signed my petition.
That's amazing.
It was actually no one from this lodge.
I think that's actually a pretty exciting thing to hear about.
Well,
yeah. So speaking of which, those guys sound like your Masonic heroes, right?
Sure,
so,
absolutely.
So who were all of your Masonic heroes? We all have a Hall of Heroes.
Well, you got to pull George Washington out first.
Sure.
Just knowing that he was a Mason. Big fan of Ben Franklin. There's some people who question whether or not. I don't, but everything I see says he was a Mason. Certainly the founding fathers, those who were Masons. I wrote a piece on Remember the Alamo. There was about 8 Masons there, or at least involved. Masons have played a part. And it's not necessarily because they're Masons that they play a part, but they are people who want to be involved, who have these standards, who have these ideals, who live to the level of these particular virtues that we espouse. And I think as a person like that, you're going to be involved. You're going to step in when somebody needs to step in, or move aside when somebody needs you to move aside. I think it's, as a Mason, you're on a path and getting to point A to point B. There's always going to be some sidelines and some curves. And so I think we got a lot of pride. And we love telling everybody Lodge 4 is George Washington's mother lodge, not his mother's lodge. But George Washington's mother lodge. We love telling people that because it sounds so great. George Washington is such a huge figure and certainly pivotal in the foundation of the country and development of the country. So those would be some. And I guess, my grandfather, even though I only knew him for 7 or 8 years. Of course, my father, like I said, he wasn't a Mason, but he was raised by a Mason. He had 2 older brothers that were Masons. So he was influenced by Masonic principles and tenets.
I was actually about to ask if it was very evident in that case.
Oh, absolutely. My dad was, straight as an arrow. honest as the day is long, do no harm to others, that sort of thing. So absolutely, those things were inculcated in my upbringing, no doubt. I don't know that he couldn't tell you what the cardinal virtues were, but he practiced them.
I like that. I like that. So, how has Freemasonry influenced or impacted not just you and all of that stuff, but your life, how you live it, and things like that?
Time for prune juice. Temperance, fortitude, prudence, and justice. If you can remember those four things and put forth some effort, you just might be different. Prudence. Yeah, I'm not going to do the stupid things I've done before. Once you do something stupid, if you figure out it was stupid, you ought to learn enough from there. But I think as a Mason, you might even beforehand say, maybe that's not a great idea. Maybe I should take a different path. Maybe I should pause. Maybe I should just shut my mouth and say nothing. Mm-hmm. A lot of times, that's the smartest thing you can do. If you don't understand, speaking out sometimes just tells people you don't understand. At the same time, listen to those who do. Listen to those who do understand. Listen to those who maybe have a few more years on you, not just Masonically, but experience. Believe it or not, enough experience will bring some wisdom.
Yeah.
And if you've had life, punch in the liver a couple of times, you know what liver punching feels like, yep. And you want to avoid it.
You're right about that. I think experience and time are two things that, so for instance, I joined the lodge at 18, right? Best decision I ever made.
Good
right?
For you.
Personally, I knew that's what I wanted going in, and I said, all right, this is, like shed my old skin, this is a new life that I'm going to be born into. And it has made all the difference. And there were plenty of times where, I would sit there and I would listen to a lot of these brothers who were significantly older than me. I think my friend group at that time, or the amount of people that I associated with, I think the average was probably in their 50s, mid 50s. So, they were always willing to stop and, give me some advice or help me out with something or help me to see something that I just didn't at the time. Especially, they say that your frontal lobe develops sometime around 25 or a little bit after that. And so I definitely needed some time to kind of develop that,
Sure.
I really didn't have that same sense of reason back then that I do now. And looking back, subduing my passions was probably one of the best things that avoided so many pitfalls that so many other people my age ended up in. But just to hear, what they had to say, that was great. But sometimes it just wasn't enough, Sometimes sure. I really did have to get, punched in the liver a couple of times to go like, okay, all right, I know what I'm doing now.
Boy, I had something really, really astounding I was going to say, and I was listening to you and just lost it. Masonry gives you a structure. We all need structure. Children need structure. And that structure is, how do you conduct yourself as a man? And it's important to say yourself. You've got to turn that critical eye that we all have. It's really easy to point to other people and go, oh, man, look at that dude. When you point it back at yourself, and I joke about having no patience. Well, it's not a joke. I don't have much patience. Some things to me should be simple and easy, and when they aren't, I got no patience. So it's that reflective lens. You go, okay, I'm not patient. I need to recognize when I'm not going to be patient. Maybe take a deep breath. By recognizing your foibles, by recognizing your shortcomings, that's where you can improve yourself. And adjacently, there's a myth we say about Masonry. We make good men better. Boy, that sounds good. What we specifically do, we give you some tools to use to make yourself better. Nobody can make you better. They can help you be better. They can help you along. Absolutely. They can encourage you. But it's a decision made by a man to say, I'm going to be this way and not this way that makes a difference. It's those choices we make as individuals.
I like that. That's actually one thing that I've always thought myself was, first off, gosh, so many people are afraid of the man in the mirror. It's scary to think about. So many people and I'll even call it out. Sometimes you even meet Masons who, everything that we do and say and talk about, they might know the words or how to hold the stick right or something like that, but to them it's just another, who knows what it is.
I wrote another piece called Just Beating the Keys. I talk about how my sister had the opportunity to take piano lessons. She's my older sister. My parents decided, well, I should have the same option. 12 years old, I didn't care about playing the piano. I look back on it and go, wish I could. Would have been nice, but I wasn't interested at all. So I banged out a song on the keyboard every night at 6 o'clock when the news came on. So my dad got to hear it and not the news. And I beat that thing to death for a year, and I wasn't even assigned to do that. But it was the only part I liked about it. I didn't want to do it, didn't have the right attitude. So I was just going through the motions. Oh, you're taking piano lessons. Oh, you're practicing a half hour every day. No, I was just beating the keys. I wasn't practicing. I wasn't getting better, just beating the keys. And I think that's the key in Masonry. Here's the piano. If you can learn the difference between the black keys and the white keys and the ones down on the left and the ones up on the right and the ones in the middle and the tone and the sound and the pedals that you use to get those things out of this magical box with hammers and strings, well, it's a metaphor for life. If you can figure out what to get from Masonry and pay attention and practice and use it and think about it and maybe spend a little more than 30 minutes a day, you might actually become a practicing Mason. And sooner or later, we'll smooth off those edges of our ashlar. Not completely smooth. We don't ever make it there. But I think you got to take the opportunities you have with the information you have, but it takes your application. It takes your efforts. And that's not just showing up at Lodge. I think it's great to show up at Lodge. There's nothing in our bylaws that says you have to. It's got to be your initiative. You've got to take the first step on your Masonic journey, and then it's up to you how you walk the path, when you walk the path, and why you walk the path.
You're right. And that's actually one thing that I appreciate. And one thing I always think about is, I can walk with you. I can walk alongside you. I can coach you through something that might be hard. I can be there and share my cloak with you because I'm our chaplain. And I'll tell you that story in a little bit about how the story of the chaplain came to be. But, but I can't take those steps for you,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm definitely not none of us are going to drag you across it. These are steps that, shoot, today I move mountains that I once had to climb, but where did that come from? That wasn't just I didn't just magically sit here in Lodge for a certain amount of time and magically the light bulb went on and it clicks. It takes self-reflection, introspection, self-sacrifice, and really questioning, what am I doing? Did I do it right? What is the best answer here?
Yeah, just knowing the words doesn't get you there.
Mm-hmm.
What's the old saying? If you're going to talk the talk, you got to walk the walk.
That's right.
And one without the other doesn't add up to much.
No, it doesn't.
And you do it for yourself, first of all. Recently I spoke and I called it It's All About Me, which sounds terrible. But Masonry is all about the individual brother. Because the source of Masonic strength comes from a group of men who have the same commitment. It's our unity that is our strength, because we are tied by the same commitment, principles, virtues, how we conduct ourselves, how we should and shouldn't. We all have those same standards. Now, we don't always live up to them. And I'll be honest with you, I'm on the road a lot. I drive too fast, some would say. I had the square and compasses on my back window. When I'm driving, I'm impatient, as I am always, particularly with people who should not be in the left lane when you're towing anything, or have bicycles on your car, or license from out of state. I have a lot of reasons why you shouldn't be in the left lane, and I get impatient. Sometimes that impatience manifests itself. Recently, I noticed that the square and compasses had fallen off my back window. And I thought to myself, if I'm going to put it back on, then I need to change that behavior. And I can be as impatient as I want. I can say what I want to within the confines of my vehicle. But if I've got that Masonic symbol on my car, nobody else should hear it or see it.
Yeah, that's right. I like that. So, actually, so that's one of the reasons why you might see one or two little things here and there that are overtly Masonic that I have, or that I might wear on a regular basis. But 9 times out of 10, if I do wear anything that might be Masonic, it's something that's buried so deep in somewhere in one of the degrees, or somewhere in the York Rite or the Scottish Rite or something like that, that unless you were there and you did it, and you remember it and you read the books and, you bought the t-shirt and all that stuff, you wouldn't know what that was, And my attitude has always been, well, first off, whoever might recognize that tells me a lot about, who they were, when we started talking about it. But that also, I'm not wearing it as a good guy badge anymore like I used to. I used to hide behind it when I was in my, late teens and early 20s, because I just didn't have the confidence back then. These days, I sit there and I think, if I do it right, then the light will shine from within to without, and people will see it for what it is. And I won't have to wear a square and compasses or a good guy badge or hide behind something. And, if they find out that I'm a Mason, then suddenly, who knows, maybe they'll question that.
The dots connect.
Right.
You're absolutely right. People should first notice who you are, how you conduct yourself, how you speak, how you treat other people. That's what they should notice first. If you're wearing a ring, that's fantastic. But people should see us and go, huh. And then later on go, oh, it was a Mason. Maybe that explains it. Well, I think that's certainly part of it.
That reminds me of a story. So my girlfriend is, she's 55, right? But she's got 3 kids. One of them is actually a couple of years older than me. And they all used to work at Jay Bryan's right across the street, right? So, the funny thing is that the oldest daughter, the one that I was friends with before I met her mom, and we're still friends, don't worry. But she said that she remembered Worshipful Mike, not because of how well he dresses or anything like that, but she remembers that one time she was working there, the food got messed up somehow, and even in spite of all that, and some people, man, their blood sugar drops, they get antsy, they get mean. He didn't do any of that. He was calm and patient and kind the entire way through. And so she remembered him because of that. And to see the association and go, oh, that was a big deal.
I pulled up to Wawa down here on Route 1 a number of years ago. And as I went to pump my gas, I heard weeping. I look over on the other side. This girl was in tears standing by her car. I don't know, 18, 19 maybe. I said, you okay? She says, I'm on my way home. I've run out of gas. I don't have any money. Well, the one part of me went, man, stupid young people. How in the world did you leave one place and not have enough gas to get to the next and no means to get fuel? So I put that aside. I just grabbed my credit card, filled up her tank, and said, when you tell the story, just tell them Mason helped you. I have no idea who she was. I assume she got home. I think those are the little things. I don't do it enough. I don't think anybody does. Those are the little things. Ma'am, can I help you in any way? It looked like you're, struggling up the stairs carrying that stuff. Can I help you in any way? Hold a door. It doesn't take a lot to look like someone who knows what they're doing.
You're right about that. I had a similar incident, probably 2014, 2015. Same thing, but I was actually, I don't remember what the name of that gas station is right there on William Street. I want to call it in the Valley because like you got, coming from Route 3 and then you got that big
where the 25-mile-an-hour warning sign is.
Yeah, exactly right where that 25-mile-an-hour warning sign is. Right. There's a gas station, one of them that's right there. And the same thing happened. And I just said, okay, well, sure, I got you. I'll fill the whole thing up and just tell them a Mason did it. That's it. So I'll catch you next time. And I just zipped off. So those things are real. Those things really do happen.
You never know what little thing you do that means nothing to you. A couple of examples. Right out of college, I moved to the beach. That's a whole different story. Came back, found out a friend of mine from college had had a cerebral hemorrhage and was in the hospital. Just so happened I wasn't working that day. Let me ride up and see him. Went to see him. He couldn't speak. Tried to describe what happened. Had to use motions. Had to learn how to read again. Terrible time. And I just stopped by and visited him that one time. He still talks about it. He still mentions it. It was just off the cuff for me. It wasn't anything that I thought was noteworthy. It meant something to him.
It's funny that you mentioned that. Actually, my story is antithetical to that, oddly enough, and really sucks to say it. But I remember there was a brother. His name was Fred Henshaw, and he was the master of Fredericksburg No. 4, and I think it's 1999. But he had been coming around for quite a while, and in around 2016, during James Ragsdale's year, I got tasked with being put on the Masonic Funerals Committee. And I think I was in like my early 20s. I think I might have been like 21 or something. I was 21. So, to me at the time, I was like, this is an important and serious thing. I don't know if I quite have the wherewithal or maturity to handle it, but I'll see what I can do. But at the time, I stopped coming around. There was a lot of stuff that was going on during that time period. That wasn't necessarily it didn't make it the most fun place to be sometimes, when we were here. And then, of course, there were other moments where I sat there and I went, I'm only one guy, I know that the brothers will understand because I'm really focused on my job right now because this is just taking up so much of my time. This is all I have right now. So, but I absconded. I totally disappeared from the lodge for about 7 years before I finally came back. But one of those things that I distinctly remember was that Brother Fred, he had a fall. He fell down the stairs and they didn't find him for a couple of days. So he spent a couple of days in the hospital, and I remember hearing James Ragsdale tell the story about how he visited him in the hospital, and he wasn't talking, he wasn't saying anything. His eyes weren't really open, but he said, he leaned over and he said, "Hey, Brother Fred, let's run down the hallways and start chasing the girls around here." Right. And suddenly something, his finger starts wiggling or something like that, so it really shows the effect of human connection. But to this day, there's a part of me that really doesn't sit right with me knowing that brother Fred, he passed, and I never went to do anything for his funeral. So, yeah.
Well, don't live on regret. Just learn from it.
Well, and I think that's a part of it is, every Masonic funeral I go to now, that especially if I take part in it as chaplain, there's a part of me that's, sitting there thinking this is for Fred.
Sure.
And once my brother passed away, another part of that came back to me, and I said, this is for him too. So
Worshipful Mike inspired me soon after he became worshipful. We were down in Richmond for one of the Masonic meetings, and he showed me something he had written. And it mentioned me and the good feeling from just having listened to one of Brother Bob's presentations. Nice compliment. I get nice compliments. Brothers are kind. But somehow it landed just right. Kind of like when you see the kitten video and it brings a little tear to your eye or something like that. You know what I mean? Where it catches you off guard. And it choked me up. I didn't really understand it. But it is that tone of appreciation, that kind word, that when given sincerely and lands just right, he didn't understand it. He didn't understand why it hit me that way. Didn't matter. But for him, it was just an offhanded comment. And I wrote Stinky Sock. If you want to know what Stinky Sock is, you'll have to find it.
Mm-hmm. No, see, I think that's great because, and to be honest with you, a lot like, I don't know, Walter Cronkite or, some of these other, voices that you grow up hearing, that's exactly how it feels whenever I hear you get up and you do a presentation, an education piece. I sit there and I think, wow, man, it's always comforting to hear Brother Bob's voice again. It's not even a mundane story. It's just a story it's almost like everyday life, but you bring it to life,
Masonry's every day.
You're right.
Yeah. Well, in an adjacent story, I call myself a public speaker. I practice at it. I took classes. I learned things over time. What you may not be aware, I was a very shy child. And this is kind of Masonic as I start thinking about it. Boy, the thought of standing up in front of somebody and talking or singing or just being in front of a group. That fear of falling, like when you're on a roller coaster. Those two things in particular, at some point, I said, I want to work on that. And I think in 7th grade, I signed up for drama class because I figured that would force me to get over my fear of being in front of people. And I think it was after my senior year in high school. I can remember going to King's Dominion with the other kids, and they go, "Oh, let's get on the Rebel Yell." And I'm like, I'm going to go over here. Just that feeling of falling. I said, you know what? I'm away from it. We were out in California, went to Knott's Berry Farm, and I jumped on this ride. It took you up, I'm going to call it 200 feet. I don't know what it was. It was high. I was the only one there. You stand on this gondola, and then it drops you with what feels like a free fall. And your stomach comes up, to your chin and that kind of stuff. And I did it. I came down, took me back up, did it again. And I'm thinking, all right, I faced it. And the man at the ride said, hold on, no one's in line. You can go again and push the button. So sometimes if we just take the first step, stepping into a Masonic lodge, inquiring about Masonry, getting over our fear of asking what is Masonry, then there's someone behind you pushing you to ask another question, take it up a little higher and get over that fear. So I think as a measure of Masonry, I think that's a good analogy. You get over your fears every day. What do you have to fear if your job is to just work on being a better man?
I like that. I like that a lot. And it's funny because, you talk about public speaking. I actually learned how to speak publicly because of the Mason Lodge.
Mhm.
So it was, um, shoot, I remember being, I took a public speaking class in community college because I just needed to, right? It was just one of those required things that I had to do. And people were always looking at me. They're like, oh man, this guy's going to kill it. And 99% of the time, I just stood up there and I just started talking, and in large part, I got good at it and I was really comfortable doing it because I was sitting there doing that all the time in the Mason Lodge and the D Malay. I think I was master counselor at the time. So I had a lot of public speaking that I had to do. It really helped me to kind of get over that fear. And suddenly it's like riding a bike now. You just get up there and you're like, all right, cool, I'm going to do it, and people wait on bated breath. And that's exactly how it feels whenever we hear your education pieces.
Well, you're very kind. And I like to think every now and again I have a little clever twist, clever idea, and I've learned how to speak and things like that. But the bottom line, if I'm in any position to give anyone advice, particularly if you're doing a lodge education piece, my advice is this. First of all, keep it short. Nobody wants to sit in lodge till midnight. And give people the respect when you're speaking to know that you don't have to tell them every little thing. They know it. You don't have to recite the catechism. You can just refer to it. Kind of that process. Keep it short. Be clear what you want to say. Know what you want to say before you get up there. I don't ever step up to the podium in lodge without having it written out. Because I'm just like every other Mason or every other man. You get them talking about something they enjoy and they like, you're going to be there a while. And you can't stop them. Keep it short. Know what you're going to say. Know how you're going to say it. And let me tell you something. If you're going to stand up in front of a lodge of Masons, know what you're talking about and practice it. You wouldn't go to work not knowing what you had to do that day and just throw something across your desk and hand it to your boss if you hadn't looked over it, thought about it, made sure it was right, made sure it was what you wanted to say, how you want to say it. And if you get up and unfold a piece of paper to speak to a crowd, you just lost them. Be prepared. Look professional. If you need readers, have them on already. Don't take them on and off the whole time. Don't do distracting things. Stand still. As you know, these are all just basics of public speaking. So you follow those basics, get the simple things done. It's like masonry. If you got the simple things, the hard things will roll right along with you.
You're right about that. And, when
I love that you tell me I'm right.
Yeah, of course,
No man ever hears that too often, do they?
Same
particularly
thing.
In a feminine voice.
That's right. It's never, you never get told that you're right and you never get flowers,
That's right.
So I'm with you, and believe it or not. So actually, this is a really interesting and exciting thing from that perspective, from the education perspective. You're the lodge education officer for Fredericksburg number 4. I'm the chapter education officer for our the Royal Arch chapter here at Fredericksburg. And when I got appointed to that position, I panicked. Right? I sat there and I was like, "Oh man, now I actually have to dive deep and dig into it. And okay, what am I going to say?" But the first person that came to mind was you. So no kidding. I sat there and I was like, "How does
Brother?" You might want to clear your mind.
Well, I thought it was a good thing, though. I sat there and I thought, Brother Bob can take, I don't know, eating an apple and magically turning this into some kind of amazing analogy towards, I don't know, doing the right thing. And, this will get planted into the ground and become, as one good turn does another, that kind of awesome stuff that you do. And I go, man, how do I maybe not capture it, but how do I sit there and make it my own?
Sure.
So yeah, so I sat there and I thought, yeah, that's exactly, so, and I came to the conclusion, I'm not you.
And most people don't want to be.
Well, I don't think most people want to be me either. So.
Well, you know what? If you want to be a basketball player, now, boy, this is going to sound terrible. I'm not comparing myself to such. But if you want to be a basketball player, you probably look at Larry Bird, Michael Jordan, list off 10 or 20 others to say, man, those are prime examples, how to dribble, how to shoot, how to be a team player, how to be in shape, how to get in shape. Prime examples of those, but no one can be those. It's the individual strengths. Masonry teaches us this. It's your individual strengths, your individual commitment that makes it possible. You don't have to measure yourself to someone else. We don't measure ourselves to George Washington. We'd all just give up. We don't measure ourselves to the perfect person. We'd all just have to give up. We can't succeed in those things. It's kind of like having a one-shot round of golf. You can't do it. There's going to take at least so many steps, and each individual is going to step differently. But as long as you're heading in the right direction for the same reason, doesn't matter who you are.
I like that. Yeah, I always sat there and I thought, take a page, take a page from their book, That's actually one of the things that, that's one of the reasons why the plumb line is probably my favorite working tool, because I sat there and I thought about it and I thought, there were moments, especially when I was younger, and I really wasn't as, wasn't thinking quite full spectrum like I do now. And maybe I still don't, but, it's at least a lot more full spectrum than it was back when I was 18. And I would see some of these brothers, how they did things. And I sat there and I thought, man, I admire that. Let me continue to,
Sure.
take a page out of that. Great example is Dan Goodwin, right? It's a story that, I tend to tell because it really means something to me. So when I was 18 and I was still an entered apprentice, I remember I sat there and I was freaking out because my apron wasn't doing what I needed it to do. And Dan just sits there, I tell him that, right? I didn't have the gut that I have now, right? To kind of hold everything together. So he says, oh, here, right? And he takes his tie clip off, right? And he literally sticks that on and my apron does exactly what I need it to. And so we go through this whole piece of the degree. I think we were initiating somebody. We might have been initiating Steve Eichner.
Mm-hmm.
That was quite some time ago. That might have been him. Or that might have been Jamie. I can't remember. But we went through all of that. And when I tried to give this tie clip back, he says, do you know what a tie clip is? Do you have one? Keep it, And to this day, I still have that tie clip. And it's a very poignant reminder of a lot of those things that I really wanted to become as I grew and as I became, a much more older and self-sustaining person.
Yeah, I love Dan.
I know it.
I'll tell you a funny story once we're off recording.
Okay. Oh, that's
if you're hearing that, Dan, yeah, that's a brother saying he's not going to talk about you where other people can hear it.
That's right. So,
well, Justin, it certainly is a pleasure chatting with you. I don't know how helpful I've been, but I helped you kill a few minutes.
I love it. This is.
I enjoy being Lodge 4's LEO, and I consider it a privilege. And they're very kind with me. My schedule is a little goofy sometimes, and when I can be in Lodge, I'm in Lodge. When I can't be, I'm not. Nobody ever gives you grief when you show up. Certainly shouldn't, and nobody really gives you grief if you don't, other than to say, "Hey, missed you. Wish I could see you."
Right.
And it's sincere. Actually, had a man one time say, "Bob, man, don't get to see enough of you. Wish I could see more of you." And I looked at him. I've known him for years. I said, "Well, what do you think? Dinner your house Wednesday night?" And he went, Well, he was being polite.
Right.
I think when men invite you to Lodge, I think they actually want to see you show up.
That's right. That's right. So we've talked about your time as Lodge education officer. Altogether, right? And that's a great accomplishment. But what have you accomplished so far that you really are proud of outside of that, or I should say the biggest, crowning achievement for you?
My my first criticism of the lodge, and I didn't run around saying it, but my first criticism of the lodge was when you walk in, like we talked about, it was stoic. Man, nobody spoke during a meeting. No one spoke during a stated meeting unless Worshipful asked you something or it was time for you to stand up. And there weren't really any wisecracks or chuckles. I like wisecracks and chuckles. I think when you come to lodge, it ought to be very relaxed. Now, I think you ought to observe ritual and the way we do lodge and stick to it. And it ought to be just as the Grand Lodge dictates. But there's room for personality. You don't just have to say just the words and then move on next, blah, blah, blah. Let's get out of here. And that comes from a comfortable association where you get to know people. I might have been one of the first to show up at lodge without a tie. And I did it on purpose because my thought is, guys, we need to lighten up a little bit. You need to be approachable. You need to be warm. You need to be friendly. Who wants to come to a lodge where everybody sits like statues and then ushers out the door when it's over? I think I played a small part. I try to make a point, talk to people, meet people I don't know, shake hands, say hello, chat, tell jokes, whatever. Spend that time in conversation. So I'm happy about that. I guess my accomplishment from Masonry is all about me. Sadly, certainly Masonry has contributed much more to me than I've contributed to Masonry. I think most of us can say that. And I'm quite happy about that. Masonry doesn't, we say secrets and there's no amazing revelations. It's just an organized thought, standards, how to conduct your life that makes sense. And if you do it, if you make the effort, the benefits are obvious. Your wife will be happier. Your kids will be happier. You'll be more in balance. You'll be less stressed. You won't necessarily worry about the things that don't matter. And I think you can be more comfortable and more pleased with how you conduct yourself as a man.
That's great. That's great. And it resonates. It does. I distinctly remember everybody kind of walking around on eggshells constantly. And I'm glad that we're not like that anymore. Gosh, I remember if you didn't address somebody as worshipful or right worshipful or most or who knows what, Mr. District, who knows what, you'd get chastised for it, And these days, I think we've adopted a new attitude where it doesn't matter who you are. We walk up to you and we say, hey, brother, and whatever previous title that there might have been or whatever fancy title that they hold now, as long as it's not in open lodge or official correspondence, it's totally fine. And they're like, what's going on, man? Good to see you.
That's right.
So very down to earth compared to what it used to be.
I can remember sitting in the junior deacon's chair and crossing my leg, putting one leg over the other. I was told, no, you keep both feet flat on the floor. And I wasn't told politely. Now, fine, keep both feet on the floor, but there's a way you talk to brothers. We're all men. We're all equal. We're on the same level. Whether you've been in Masonry for 100 years or 10 minutes, we're all the same. And we should treat each other with that respect and that dignity at all times.
That's right. That's right. Well, we've talked about your accomplishments so far. What is something that you hope to accomplish yet?
Well, I hope to make it to 63. I tell my wife, one of the biggest problems we have in our marriage is that we are happy and content, Boy, if you're happy and content, it is not all that motivational. I tell people I used to leave the house because of what was there. Then I left the house because nothing was there. Now I don't want to leave the house. Masonry can affect you the same way. It is friendly. It is warm. It is comforting. It is supportive. It gives you a chance to improve yourself and no one's watching. Boy, that's a pretty comfortable spot. You don't have to do a single thing other than improve yourself. So there can come complacence with being content and happy. And I'm content and happy in Masonry. So I guess goals, be more content and happy, be a better man. I think those are goals we all can have.
You know, I think at some point it becomes less about conquest and it becomes more about peace.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And sure.
So, you know, and I've been thinking about that myself, you know. Was it Tolstoy? It said something to the effect of every man thinks to change the world, but no man thinks to change himself.
There you go.
You know, shoot, you know, for the longest time I sat there thinking about it. I'm like, you know, I'm content. I would be content with just being happy and living a pretty simple day to day, you know, just walking the earth with my fellow creatures. But, you know, gosh, the world just pulls you in so many crazy directions. Sure. And they say, you know, you got to have this by this age. And, you know, you got to, you know, have the 401k with the BMW and the, you know, and the $1 million house. And, you know,
with whom we associate is critically important. As a youth in church, I remember somebody said, okay, here's what we're going to do. I want you to stand on this chair. Now you here on the floor, pull that person down the floor with you. It was easy. Little tug, they came right off the chair. Now they said, you're up on the chair, lift that person up to you. That's a lot harder. A lot harder to bring somebody along, a lot harder to lift somebody up, a lot harder to try to explain to, hey, you know, try this. You might be happier. You might be more content. This might make you feel better. It might make you present yourself better. Very difficult to tell other people how to do that and what they should do.
That's a beautiful illustration there. That reminds me of it was a story that I came across somewhere on the internet, right? Where, you know, a man dies and he says, okay, well, we're going to give you a special choice. Through this door's hell and through this door's heaven. And you get to at least poke your head in before you walk through, right? And he walks he pokes his head into the door for hell, and he sees these people who are all sitting at a round table with super long spoons that are just tied to their hands, and they can't get them off. And everybody's sitting there just starving, and they're angry, and they're yelling at each other. And he's like, okay, whatever that was, right? So he goes over to the other door, labeled heaven, and he pokes his head in, and he sees people who are feeding each other, right? And so I thought, wow, that's beautiful, you know. And then it ends on I don't know, kind of an anticlimactic joke, you know.
You know? No, I get it. You're absolutely right. If I am focused more on what my wife needs and helping to provide that, I'm not so worried about me. It's not all about me. If you can focus that energy in order to give, in order to help, you know, we say it's about making ourselves a better man, but in doing so, I think helping others, well, particularly your spouse, particularly your family. My mother's 87 years old, and I lack patience. And I'm reminded of that every time she asks me for something. I've gotten better. So if you're focused on other people and what you can do for other people, whether that's self-improvement or helping them along their way, then you're not so concerned about me. What about me?
I like that. Yeah. Do you have any advice for somebody who might be trying to become a Mason today? Or
do it.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no downside. There's no downside. If you decide it's not for you, okay. I don't think there's many to decide it's not for them. I think life can put up obstructions. The masonry can require a lot of time and effort. But yeah, I think if you take the lessons and apply it to yourself and never ever darken the lodge again, then masonry is a success. Then it was certainly worth you becoming a brother.
Good.
And I know guys like that. I know guys that I taught in an apprentice class. Still talk to them to this day. Never see them in lodge. That's okay. They got it.
Yeah. That's exactly what happened with me. Those 7 years that I was gone, I sat there and I said, I'm going to apply, these lessons in every aspect of my life. And so I remember sitting there going, getting extremely frustrated with some people and some things that I was doing for work. But even then I sat there and I went, I'm no better than them. There before the grace of God go I. I'm just another human being. So it's interesting that, it did help. It did, and I didn't darken the doorsteps of the lodge for, again, 7 years. But during those 7 years, I'd like to think that those lessons that I took and I carried with me made a difference.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Once you have them, you don't get rid of them.
That's right. So before we close everything off, is there anything that you'd like to add? The mic is totally yours.
If you're looking to become a Mason, ask someone. Ask a Mason. If they don't give you a good answer, ask another one. Stop by the lodge. Yeah, it's still right when I said it's a moral and ethical fraternity. It's not not exactly a broad base, eye-opening discussion of Masonry, but it's a good start. And if you think you're a good man and you want to be a better man, stop by the lodge. Certainly won't do any harm.
That's awesome. All right. Well, and with that, we're going to sign off. So, Brother Bob, I want to say thank you.
Brother Justin, thank you so much. Enjoyed it.
Absolutely. All right. This has been Meet the Mason. Take care now.